Newcastle pushed 4 past Tottenham, and I'm here to give you a tactical point of view of what really went down in this game. The managerial approaches to this game were completely different from what these managers actually would follow against one another. Eddie Howe, knowing that he might be lacking a bit of that flair, he might be lacking a bit of that edge against a team like Tottenham, who like to dominate the ball, who like to be in possession most of the game. He decided to hold off. He decided to put his men on hold, wanted them to play in his own half so that they could bounce on a counter. This was the theme throughout the game, with phases of Newcastle pressing really high up the field, pressing in Tottenham's half, where Tottenham was stuck in major situations, not able to get out of their own half. Tottenham, on the other hand, went in with a similar system of 4-3-3. Ange wanted them to play the usual Ange ball, and they were to an extent doing it till the 30th minute, but then there were situations which were created by Eddie Howe's tactics, which did not let them get any access near the goal or near Dubravka. So we got to see two different sequences when Tottenham were in possession. One, where Van der Ven and Romero were being asked to push out wide, and Van der Ven was driving the ball ahead. He was passing the ball to Udogi, who was trying to find Timo Werner in this space on a usual basis. Madison was up ahead next to Heung-min Son, but there was a certain disconnect at times. They were getting dissipated thanks to Sean Longstaff and Jacob Murphy, who, mind you, had an excellent game playing in that makeshift role. That wing back position really worked well for him in this game. He was able to dissipate any sort of attacking momentum which was coming from Timo Werner's. And there were instances where Tottenham, as usual, wanted to play from the middle. So you could see that Isak was trying to press up ahead. Guimaraes was here. Anderson, again, very agile. Anderson turned out to be the engine that they actually needed. And Barnes would be caught up here in the situation. Shaw would be up ahead. Heung-min Son would be somewhere here. Madison would be here. So in this situation, they were actually trying to find their plays, and they were trying to play through the middle. Bentancur was trying to play the ball to Madison, and Madison would try to find Son in these small pockets of space. To a certain extent, he was able to find Son, but then Fabian Shaw was really determined to put him down, and he was able to do that on so many different occasions. Emil Kraft, being in the situation, was able to take care of Timo Werner as well. Again, the work ethic being instilled by these players was tremendous. I have not seen Newcastle doing this in the longest. Now, this was a situation which was being created numerously in the first half, where Timo Werner was found lurking on the left flank as usual, and we know that Timo Werner is not the best when it comes to finding men inside the box. And this was the theme for Tottenham, completely disjointed. Madison was trying to add up value right here, but they were up against Newcastle's astute low block, which, mind you, they were shifting from a high pressing regime. And as soon as they lost the ball, Newcastle's players were shifting down to a low block, which was the theme of the game in totality. And the most weird thing about this formation was that Ange was not preferring to play from the back to the right flank. He preferred the defenders to play from the back to the left flank, which wasn't really working in their favor because, in my opinion, Pedro Porro was doing a tremendous job in dissipating any sort of counter transition which was being instilled by Newcastle in possession. So, in possession, Tottenham were extremely horrific. They were not able to make the runs that they needed to make in behind the defenders. They were not getting any such opportunities. The only opportunity which we saw throughout the game was when Johnson came in behind Dan Burns in the situation, and Timo Werner was here, Croft was here, Longstaff was here, and Timo Werner literally missed the ball. The ball was in Johnson's feet. He delivered the ball right here, and it went right here. So in this situation, there was nothing which could be done. And Timo Werner created one or two shots as well, which had no XG attached to it at all. Son was not great with the hold up. Son was totally getting dissipated by the physicality which Fabian Shaw on so many occasions was offering. Son, even in phases where Son and Bentancur were slightly deeper, Shaw would come in. He would surge in ahead on that high line, leaving Anderson and Guimaraes at the back to just dissipate anything which was coming in from Tottenham's hand. They wanted to ensure that Tottenham were unsettled throughout the game, and this is what happened. Even though Tottenham had the possession throughout the game, they were completely unsettled. Now moving to the segment where Newcastle were creating situations, difficulties for Tottenham to dissipate them off the ball, and this is how they got 10 to 12 corners throughout the game by pressing up high. These tactics were so phenomenal to follow. I think even the players were enjoying playing against a Tottenham who were struggling against them. Again, the goals that came in from Isak, we'll discuss them in a bit, but in this situation, you can clearly see that Tottenham was struggling to counter press. They were struggling to instill. In this situation, you could clearly see that Tottenham was struggling to get out of that counter press. Bissouma and Bentaker struggled throughout the game against the likes of Anderson. Again, Anderson was really hybrid. He was operating in a 6 as well as an 8, and he was supporting Guimaraes in doing the same. The understanding between Longstaff, Anderson, and Guimaraes is what really impressed me the most. These players are usually not really performing at this level together, barring Bruno Guimaraes, who's always been there for Tottenham, for Newcastle in a way. But this in this game, they were totally impressive, trying to block off any access to trying to cut off any sort of supply being generated by Madison, Bentancur, Bissouma. They were totally nullified in majority of the situations. So the press was so ferocious from the right, Gordon and Hobby Barnes. They looked supremely phenomenal in driving into the box, and they kept Van de Ven and Romero completely unsettled throughout the game. Isak made Van de Ven dance on two different occasions when the goals were scored. That was completely uncalled for from a defender of Van de Ven's stature because of the narratives that are going around in the media of him being as good as the other defenders in the Premier League. Again, this being one off, I wouldn't really come down to creating an assessment of this sort, but we need to see more from Van de Ven in these 1v1 situations. Even when Tottenham were pressing up really high and they lost the ball in Newcastle's half, this is where Newcastle generated that pace and they used Anthony Gordon and Harvey Barnes in creating these situations. Now, you need to carefully notice the goal, how the goal came out for Newcastle, how this opened their scoring charts in the very first segment, in the very first half of this game. We could clearly see that Anthony Gordon, as soon as he retrieved the ball on the transition, he was trying to find the right route, the right pocket to pass Isak in, and he was successful in doing so. He created this pass right here to find Isak, who literally beat Romero at this. Romero was drawn in the situation. Van de Ven came here, and by the time he came here, he literally capitulated in the situation. Isak went right here and he scored a beautiful goal past Vicario. This is how Newcastle gained that confidence in the game. This is how Newcastle really created and embedded their philosophy into the game. So the substitutions which Ange made did not really work out well for him. However, they were able to develop some sort of tempo because of what Kulusevski was offering on this flank. He was holding the ball up well, but he was not able to find that right pass, that killer pass to find Johnson in this situation. However, Johnson was able to hold up the ball well better than what Heung-min Son was doing in this situation, which is where the question really arises. Can Heung-min Son really be played against teams who hit a low block or were as ferocious as Newcastle? This is where Ange would be missing the likes of Richarlison, Hoiberg, and Pape Marasa were trying to find the right spaces to play the ball, but they were unable to find that right channel to get into, to disperse the players out, to create something in that situation. This is where the midfielders for Tottenham were really struggling to get into the game. And I felt on so many occasions, Hoiberg led the team down as well by losing possession in crucial areas, which led to Newcastle getting that momentum and they kept transitioning to get more corners, to get more set pieces, and Fabian Shaw scored a goal from that as well. Tottenham had one of the worst games that we've seen so far from them, losing 4-0 to the likes of Newcastle, who have been down with so many injuries. They just operated on simple counters and transitions. They held on to their guns. They wanted to defend really deep, and they did that. And the endurance coming in from people like Anderson and Isak was so phenomenal in that number 9 role of driving and bending his runs against the likes of Van de Ven and Romero, creating such situations which was difficult to get out of. Tottenham had an abysmal game overall. Fullbacks were struggling to get into the game. Emerson Royale again creating those inverted positions, to make something out of the situation, but they were not able to get past this low block, which is why they just registered 2 shots in target out of the total 8 that they took. Newcastle are definitely going to be in the race to get a Europa now next season. Man United's position is threatened, especially after the draw that they've the goals that they conceded. They deserve to lose a game against Bournemouth again in the reverse fixture. But again, Man United, being Man United, are still scuttling for points.